Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that to become a doctor in colonial America, you had to live with and learn from an experienced physician as an apprentice for 3 years? Learn that colonial apprentices learned about medicine and surgical techniques for the treatment of gunshot wounds by reading books from England, Scotland, and the Netherlands. Learn how their training to become an apothecary or a pharmacist included formulating their own medicines like syrups, pills, and ointments. Discover that colonial physician William Shippen Jr. established the first maternity hospital in America.
You know that specific feeling you get when you walk into a modern hospital today?
Oh yeah, the lighting.
Right.
Yeah.
The bright, shadowless fluorescent lights, and everything is just the sterile stainless steel.
It's very controlled.
Exactly. It's meticulously designed to project control. You've got these massive digital anatomy screens and, rows of students in crisp white coats.
Just absorbing centuries of perfectly cataloged human knowledge.
Yeah, it feels orderly, it feels precise. It almost feels like this is just the natural state of medicine.
Right. It projects this aura of absolute standardization. Because, every single procedure, from how a surgeon scrubs in to the exact dosage of a painkiller.
Down to the milligram.
Exactly. It's all the result of these deeply regulated, sanitized systems that we just take them for granted now.
We really do. But you, our listener, you sent us down an incredible rabbit hole today that completely shatters that pristine image.
It really does. The stack of materials you provided is just fascinating.
It's wild. We've got rare colonial medical journals, historical texts, some profound scriptural truths, and even a look at modern elementary education.
Such a huge range.
It is. So our mission for this deep dive today is to trace the incredibly messy, fascinating, and deeply purposeful birth of American medical education.
We're going from literally grinding mercury by hand in a living room.
Barehanded.
Yes, barehanded, to forging the very first medical institutions in a brand new country.
And ultimately, we're going to uncover the profound divine purpose behind why humanity pushes itself to gain all this knowledge in the first place, which, honestly, it fundamentally reframes the way we view learning.
It's a huge shift, because the evolution from a completely unregulated, chaotic frontier practice to the formalized systems we rely on today, it's staggering.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because to truly appreciate how far we've come, we really have to establish the baseline.
We have to look at the gritty reality of the colonial era.
Right. If you wanted to be a doctor in America in the 1700s, you didn't, apply to a university or stress over entrance exams.
You didn't sit in a tiered lecture hall, no.
No. You became a live-in apprentice.
Yeah, the aspiring physician would essentially just move into the home of an established practitioner.
Which sounds so intrusive today.
It does. And the education consisted of studying the doctor's personal, usually very limited library of scientific writings.
Whatever books they happen to own.
Exactly. And you learned the trade entirely by watching and doing under their direct supervision. There was no overarching curriculum at all.
So the quality of your education depended entirely on whoever you happened to be living with.
100%.
Well, the journal entries from Dr. Eliu Ashley, he's one of the apprentices featured in your materials, they paint a really vivid picture of this day-to-day life, and honestly, it is wild to read.
It's basically a diary of exhaustion.
Yeah. Listen to his entry from April 5, 1773. He writes about studying all morning, and then he says, in the afternoon, the doctor set Murray and myself making the Ethiops mineral, 4 ounces of each, we worked upon till dark.
Wow.
Until dark.
And just for context, Ethiops mineral was a topical ointment formulated from hog's lard, mercury, and sulfur.
I'm struggling to see how grinding sulfur and literal mercury barehanded for 6 hours teaches you anything about the human body.
It doesn't really.
It sounds more like hazing than an actual medical education, like the most extreme, dangerous live-in internship imaginable where your boss just makes you mix toxic chemicals. So what does this all mean? Was this system actually effective or just cheap labor?
What's fascinating here is that while it looks like hazing through a modern lens, It highlights the underlying economic and geographical reality of the 18th century.
How so?
Well, the colonies had zero local pharmaceutical manufacturing, none.
Oh, right. They were completely dependent on imports.
Exactly. Imported British drugs and surgical instruments. So an apprenticeship wasn't simply about diagnosing an ailment. It included the physical labor of formulating the medicine from raw ingredients.
You had to be the pharmacist, too.
You had to be the apothecary, yes. If you needed a topical ointment, you couldn't just order a pre-made batch. You had to grind the hogs, lard, and mercury yourself, or the treatment simply did not exist.
That is wild. And it wasn't a one-off chore either.
No, it was constant.
Yeah, a few weeks later, on May 13th, Ashley notes being pulled away from his studies at 8 in the morning to make species higher pica.
Which was a medicinal syrup of honey and spices for colds.
Right. And they worked on that single batch for 4.5 hours.
Just stirring syrup.
Then, fast forward to June 28th, 1775, and he spends the entire morning dressing the wounds of patients, followed by an afternoon reading British texts. Specifically, Dr. Lobb's treatise on the practice of physic.
Notice the reliance on British texts in that entry.
Yeah, everything is imported.
New England physicians and their apprentices were desperately consuming these imported medical books from England, Scotland, and the Netherlands.
Because the Atlantic Ocean was essentially the entire supply chain.
For both medical goods and medical knowledge.
Yeah.
And it took months to cross.
But, I mean, reading an imported book about the human body is vastly different from walking the wards of a massive European teaching hospital.
Or dissecting a cadaver in a dedicated university anatomy lab.
Exactly.
And that transatlantic barrier created a massive bottleneck in the quality of colonial healthcare.
Because Europe was undergoing this massive scientific revolution at the time, right?
Yes, formal university-level medical education was thriving over there. But accessing it required a colonial American to cross the ocean.
Which most people just couldn't do.
The sheer cost of that journey, combined with the living expenses and the tuition in Europe, it made it prohibitively expensive and wildly impractical for the vast majority of aspiring doctors.
So this is the exact friction point where a massive shift happens. And it's spearheaded by a pioneer named Dr. John Morgan.
Yes, Morgan is crucial here.
He is someone who actually managed to clear that hurdle. He crossed the ocean, immersed himself in the European scientific revolution, studied at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, spent time in Paris and Italy.
Just touring the best facilities in the world.
Yeah, and he receives his medical degree in 1763 and then returns to the colonies in 1765. And he didn't just come back to set up a cushy private practice.
No, he came back to completely change the game.
He really did.
He recognized that the isolated apprenticeship model could never keep pace with the advancements happening globally. So on May 3, 1765, Dr. Morgan founded the College of Philadelphia.
Which stands today as the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine.
Exactly. And he became North America's first professor of medicine.
That's a huge milestone.
But building the institution was only half the battle. He had to design a functional curriculum in a colony that completely lacked the established infrastructure of Europe.
Right, he's basically starting from scratch. And your sources outline two distinct European educational models that Morgan had to draw inspiration from. You have the London model and the Edinburgh model.
Which were very different.
Super different. The London medical schools provided a highly practical, tactile education. They focused on the physical reality of the body through intense anatomy, dissection, and incredibly specific surgical techniques for treating trauma.
Particularly gunshot wounds.
Right.
Because the London approach was forged in the reality of constant military conflict. Europe was frequently at war, and London produced surgeons who were immediately ready for the chaotic triage of the battlefield.
That makes sense.
But the University of Edinburgh, where Dr. Morgan actually earned his degree, took a starkly different approach.
Yeah, Edinburgh stressed medical theory.
It was highly academic, deeply rooted in the underlying science, physiology, and the philosophy of disease.
So it focused on why the body failed, not just how to patch it up quickly. I get the theoretical appeal of the Edinburgh model, for sure. But how did Morgan plan to replicate London's hands-on dissection model in a colony? I imagine they had strict religious and social taboos about handling cadavers.
Oh, it was a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
He couldn't just transplant a European university into Philadelphia. He had to synthesize these two philosophies into something uniquely adapted to the American reality.
So how did he do it?
Well, the faculty he recruited for the College of Philadelphia all held medical degrees from the University of Edinburgh.
Okay, so they brought that heavy theoretical foundation.
Right. But crucially, several of them had also sought out advanced private training courses in London, so they had mastered practical anatomy, surgery, and midwifery.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Morgan combines these approaches to create the Philadelphia model.
Yes.
And the genius of this model was its tiered accessibility. He knew the colonies desperately needed the benefits of a teaching hospital, but he also knew almost no one could afford to drop their entire life to pursue a formal multi-year medical degree.
It just wasn't feasible.
So he built a system that allowed hundreds of students to attend anatomical and theoretical lectures a la carte.
It was an incredibly pragmatic solution to that geographical and economic bottleneck we discussed earlier.
It's brilliant.
If a young apprentice couldn't afford the full university track, they could still pay a fee to sit in the lecture hall, absorb the modern European theories, witness the anatomical demonstrations.
And then take that cutting-edge knowledge back to their local apprenticeship.
Exactly. It democratized the European scientific revolution.
Democratized, yes. But change is rarely welcomed with open arms, especially when it threatens established power structures.
Oh, absolutely not. There was massive resistance.
By 1767, male students were paying the school 5 guineas each to witness these lectures. And while the tiered system was brilliant, 5 guineas was a substantial sum back then.
It was a lot of money.
More importantly, Morgan faced intense ideological pushback. In his book, Discourse Upon the Institution of Medical Schools in America, he fiercely promoted a liberal education.
Right. He was arguing that doctors needed comprehensive, formalized study before they ever laid hands on a patient.
And the established colonial physicians did not like that. The ones who had spent their entire careers running these live-in apprenticeships, relying on young men like Elihu Ashley to grind their sulfur.
They viewed this formalized approach with deep suspicion.
They really did.
They argued that sitting in a lecture hall, analyzing the philosophy of disease, was totally useless compared to the practical, hands-on experience of setting a bone or formulating a syrup.
It honestly seems like a classic turf war. I mean, the established doctors are watching their authority, their prestige, and basically their free labor pool being systematically dismantled by this new university system.
That claims to be vastly superior.
Exactly.
It was absolutely a battle between gatekeeping and standardization. The established doctors trusted what they could oversee locally in their own homes. But Morgan and the new wave of educators understood a crucial truth. Without standardization, the quality of medical care across the colonies would forever remain inconsistent and highly localized.
A patient's chance of survival shouldn't depend on which apprentice happened to grind the hog's lard that morning.
Exactly. That's the danger of the apprentice model.
And we cannot ignore the timeline here either. Morgan founds the school in 1765. The Revolutionary War is looming.
Right around the corner.
And when the conflict actually breaks out, Dr. Morgan isn't just sitting in an ivory tower debating medical theory. He is an ardent patriot. He steps right into the role of Director General at the military hospitals and Physician-in-Chief to the American Army.
And this is where his exposure to the London models focus on treating gunshot wounds and battlefield trauma becomes critically important.
It pays off.
Heavily. The theoretical knowledge of Edinburgh had to be instantly translated into the brutal reality of wartime triage.
But even in the chaos of the Revolutionary War, Morgan's obsession with standardization doesn't waver. Your sources highlight that he actively fought to bring these fiercely independent local colonial surgeons under formal army control.
He had to.
He was trying to enforce a unified standard of care across all the military hospitals.
He was applying his educational philosophy directly to the military apparatus. He knew that a fractured, disjointed medical corps, where every surgeon operated by their own homegrown rules, would inevitably cost lives.
It would be chaos.
Total chaos. He was trying to build institutional resilience in the middle of a war zone.
And it wasn't just him. The College of Philadelphia faculty were all heavily involved in this institutional building. William Shippen, Jr., who taught anatomy, surgery, and midwifery alongside Morgan, he went on to establish the very first maternity hospital in America.
These pioneers were dragging medical care out of the private living room and forcing it into the public institutional sphere.
They really were establishing the infrastructure of public health from nothing.
But looking at the sheer friction they faced, I mean, the transatlantic voyages, the financial ruin, the pushback from their peers, the logistics of standardizing care during a revolution, it begs a deeper examination of their underlying motives.
It really does. And that brings us to the profound philosophical shift in the materials you shared. We've traced the history, the logistics, and the battles over curriculum. But the final sources you provided force us to look at the ultimate truth behind acquiring all of this knowledge.
The why behind it all.
Yes. Why did a young apprentice work until dark mixing toxic ointments? Why did John Morgan sail across the Atlantic, fight the entire medical establishment, and try to organize the chaos of the Revolutionary War?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely reorients how we view human progress.
It changes everything.
They were not simply pursuing prestige or academic vanity. They were gathering knowledge to prepare themselves to bless the lives of others. The underlying mandate of their struggle was service.
And your sources provide an incredibly powerful, factual truth that outlines this exact pursuit. It's found in the Doctrine and Covenants, section 88, verses 78 through 80.
A beautiful passage.
It really is. The text outlines a massive, all-encompassing mandate for what kinds of knowledge we are expected to gain. It says we are commanded to be instructed, and I'll just quote the ideas here of things both in heaven and in the earth and under the earth, things which must shortly come to pass.
It covers everything.
It goes on to include things at home, things abroad, the wars and perplexities of the nations, the judgments on the land, and a knowledge of countries and kingdoms.
The sheer breadth of that directive is staggering. I mean, it encompasses physics, astronomy, geology, history, international relations, sociology, and very clearly, the sciences and medicine.
Yeah.
It frames the pursuit of every academic discipline, not as secular curiosity, but as a moral imperative.
And looking at the life of Dr. John Morgan through the lens of that exact text is remarkable, because his life is a literal fulfillment of that directive.
It really is.
He sought out knowledge of things which are abroad by traveling to Paris, Italy, and Scotland. He dealt intimately with the perplexities of the nations and wars by serving as the Director General of the military hospitals during the American Revolution.
He pushed for dissection and anatomy, literally uncovering things under the earth to understand the human body.
Yes, he gathered all of that worldly, complex knowledge, brought it back to his home country, and weaponized it to alleviate suffering and bless the lives of thousands of people.
This raises an important question, directed entirely at you, our listener.
Mm-hmm.
We are not all called to found the first medical school in a new nation or to standardize military hospitals during a revolution, but we are all actively gathering knowledge. By taking the time to listen to this deep dive, you are exploring complex history, institutional development, and human behavior. So how does the specific information you are gathering in your own life help prepare you to bless the lives of others?
It completely changes the framework of the mundane. It means that sitting in a lecture, reading a dense historical text, or even doing the repetitive, exhausting tasks of an apprenticeship, like mixing a medicinal syrup for 4 hours, it's not just busy work.
No, it has a purpose.
If the ultimate goal of acquiring that skill is to serve humanity, then the act of learning itself becomes a sacred responsibility. The history we've discussed today wasn't just a march toward better technology. It was a realization of that mandate.
Because the theory taught at the University of Edinburgh and the surgical practicalities mastered in the London schools were ultimately meaningless in isolation.
Right.
The entire purpose of Morgan's struggle to synthesize them in Philadelphia was to heal the patient sitting in front of them. Knowledge that remains unapplied fails its primary purpose.
Stepping back and looking at the entire arc of what we've unpacked today is just awe-inspiring. We started with the gritty reality of 1773, with young Eliar Ashley grinding hogs, lard, and sulfur until the sun went down, entirely dependent on whatever knowledge his local mentor possessed.
A very limited scope.
And then we watched Dr. John Morgan cross an ocean, synthesize the greatest educational models of Europe, and hack the system to found an institution in 1765 that would elevate the standard of care for an entire continent.
That's an incredible journey.
And we've anchored all of that messy, complicated history in the profound scriptural truth that all knowledge, whether it's the anatomy of the human heart or the perplexities of a global conflict, serves the higher purpose of helping humanity.
And the systems and standards they fought so bitterly to establish, they are the foundation of the safety and precision we experience every single time we interact with modern medicine today.
We owe them so much.
Their pursuit of knowledge continues to bless lives centuries later.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on a fascinating detail from the very end of your provided materials. Alongside the rare historical texts and the scriptural mandates, you included a video overview of an elementary school medical education program.
Which is just amazing to think about.
Right. Think about the implications of that for a second. The complex anatomical lectures that cost 5 guineas in 1767, the very concepts that shocked established colonial doctors and required years of dangerous transatlantic travel to fully comprehend, those are now the foundational concepts we are teaching to children in elementary school.
It's mind-blowing.
The absolute bleeding edge of 18th century science is now baseline elementary curriculum.
The floor of human understanding is constantly being raised. What was once revolutionary inevitably becomes fundamental.
Which makes you wonder, as you continue your own mandate to gather knowledge from across the earth to serve others, what information currently feels incredibly complex, exclusive, and revolutionary to us today that will simply be elementary to the next generation?
That's a great question.
Thank you for sharing such a profound, varied, and genuinely inspiring stack of sources with us. Keep diving deep, keep gaining that knowledge, and keep finding new ways to use it to bless the world.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.